What makes a reasonable person walk away from their life, their family, and their freedom? It almost never starts with fear. It starts with an offer of belonging, absolute truth, and a simpler way to live. But once the door is closed, the price of staying slowly eclipses everything you used to be. We're exploring two vastly different groups that mastered the art of coercive control and the devastating costs paid by those inside. Tonight on Newsworthy, 2 words and 2 question marks.
We're back, Jerry. We're back from Hocking Hills, Ohio.
That we are.
That was a fun trip. It was
I agree.
raining all around us. The night before the festival started, they got 1.5 inches of rain right at the fairgrounds. But everybody who was there persevered. They got through it. It was a fine show, fine entertainment. And it was a fun time for us. We had we got to interact with a lot of fun folks. Many stories that we're going to hear on Encounters.
That's right.
The one thing that I've noticed as we've gotten better at doing this podcast is we used to go to those festivals and we interviewed and recorded everybody. We've gotten very good at listening to people's stories and
being a little more selective.
Being more selective and understanding when someone really doesn't want to come online and we don't force them. You okay?
I hope so.
Okay, don't die.
Right.
Although I did do the fastest CPR class I've ever taken in my life today. So I'm good. I'm good.
I don't know if I will be, if it was the fastest one you've ever done.
It's like when you do them every other year for 100 years, it becomes it becomes muscle memory.
Well, in case you need my assistance, I have done the CPR training as well.
Good.
If I'm not mistaken, my last one was like 45 years ago. I was 16 years old. So with
I'm a
with
dead
my
man.
memory, you've got nothing to worry about.
Well, what I will tell you is the one thing that changed from the last time I did it to this time was the fact that they said that you should definitely apply some sort of lipstick. So
To yourself or?
it depends.
Okay. The main thing I remember about mine 45 years ago as a 16-year-old high school kid was 3 of the hottest girls in my high school was in the class with me. I remember them far more than any of the things I was taught. So, like I said, you've got nothing to worry about if you need my assistance.
So I'm just dead. That's good to know. Yeah. I appreciate it.
Your wife wants to make sure that you update the will before that happens. I'm just saying.
Lordy be. Listen. Well, no, I'm not even going to tell that story. Not going to tell that story. Brett's not with us again tonight.
He's not.
No, he was swimming in the ocean and got eaten by an octopus.
Oh, my goodness.
Now, I think they swallowed him whole, and he may join us a bit slimed in a later date. But currently, he's somewhere in the Atlantic in the belly of an octopus. I had neglected to tell people where Brett was, and I didn't want to do that.
You have been. I've got to agree.
So, we got a cool show tonight. Kind of a hard show to talk about in a little ways.
And a little bit different for us since we left the true crime genre behind.
Yeah, we don't do that a whole lot anymore.
We don't do much of this type show. We decided that this one is macabre enough for us to revisit. Yeah.
I think that's a good way of looking at it because, quite frankly, tonight's show for me, and before we went on live, we talked about it a little bit, and I really wanted to do, I try to vary how we present what we're talking about. Sometimes it's just boring if someone reads a thing but in this particular instance, for my part of this show, I felt like a story was the best way to say it. For me, it was the best way of not losing the tone of how bizarre what we're going to cover is. What are we covering tonight?
We are covering cults, in particular 2 cults. And we've done cults before a couple of times. I think the last one we did was the Fall River cult.
Yeah.
But we've done some cults before, and As I said back when we did the true crime genre routinely, it really fit in. Doesn't quite as much anymore, but with the two that we've got, I think the macabre aspect of these two groups is certainly strong enough for it to fit into the macabre aspect of our genre.
I think that's a nice way of putting it.
Yeah.
Yours is
more indirect.
Indirect. Mine is
more
a
mental.
bunch is
Yes.
it's out. It's literally out there.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
I just
Cults are scary. Cults are confusing for me. I've long wondered, why do people join cults? What is the draw? I think after doing research on cults in the last 2 or 3 years, I now understand far better what gets people into them in the first place. Whether it's charismatic leader, people looking for a sense of belonging, there's a lot of different reasons that are individualized, but you could still group them together into a few reasons that seems to follow almost every cult. Still don't get why people stay in the cults.
Well, I think I have a good hypothesis for that.
Which is?
We talked about it a little bit before, and I'll bring it up again now. I think that it becomes a death spiral. And what I mean by that, in today's world, we have so many people on the right or on the left in the United States anyway, politically, when they go on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or X or whatever they go on to, they always want to see what their side is seeing, right or left. The algorithms pick that up and start funneling just that side to each of those people. So if you're a Republican or you're right leaning, and that's what you want to, the algorithm surrounds you in that. And if you never see the other side, or you never see a neutral side, you start to think that that is the only right way. And you can't understand why anybody in the world has a different opinion than you, because these are the facts, and they're the facts that the algorithm has fed you. And that goes both ways. And I know you and I don't use and don't get into that a lot. We don't get into those partisan politics very much at all. I used to, but I have came way back the other way because I think it's a lot of hoo-ha and craziness.
But it's that relates directly to cults.
I think it does.
No, I'm saying as it relates to cults. Do they not have enough common sense to be able to remember, for those who had life before the cult, for kids who are raised in the cults, a little bit harder if they've never known anything else? But most of these cults do have some interaction with the outside world, that they can't look around and see that this is the only way to do things.
Well, I think that the leadership and the structure, once you're in, you learn to see everyone else that you interact with as wrong. Well, you're not. For mine, I'm covering the Heaven's Gate cult. If you're not with them, then you're going to be left here when they go to the mothership.
Well, I think that's to some degree every cult.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying.
But that's part of what I'm saying. They don't have enough common sense to go, wait a minute, there's 100, there's 500, there's 5,000 of our group. There's billions of other people. We've got it 100% figured out, but the other 7.99999 billion are wrong. I mean, how egotistical can you be to think that your small group has got everything figured out, even though you're doing it so radically different from everyone else? And I also think that we're oversimplifying it from the sense that many different cults will have many different ways of trying to keep people hooked.
No, I don't disagree with you at all. Don't disagree with you at all.
With my group, which is the 12 tribes, a lot of it I think was financial. A lot of it was economic. I'll get into it more as we talk about it. But yeah, cults are very interesting to say the least, scary.
Yeah, and here's how I look at this. And you're going to say, what? I can see how people get sucked in.
In some ways, yes. I can see how they join.
If now, I am not a depressive person. I am a glass is not only half full, it's bubbling over kind of person. You know this about me. But I could see if I weren't, and I was alone, how a cult becomes a band of brothers.
I agree.
How a cult becomes a connection that I didn't have before.
Provides the family you didn't have before.
If I come from a broken home, it could potentially represent the family that I never had.
If you're going through some huge problem in your life, divorce or death of a parent, a loved one, a lot of things. And again, I think it's a certain type of person. Depressed individuals, I think you kind of alluded to that. Probably more so than a lot of people, but yeah, I agree. So who's going to start it? You're
Let me go first today. I want to, again, we cover things in a myriad of different ways. And tonight I really felt like the best way to cover Heaven's Gate was with the story.
So tell the story.
If you will, I got my paper here because I'm old school. Go ahead and make fun. Go ahead and do your laugh.
No. I was just thinking in the words of, and then I forgot his friggin' name. And now for the rest of the story.
Paul Harvey.
There you
Paul
go.
Harvey. How do you forget Paul
I
Harvey?
even forgot his byline, but couldn't remember his name. Love that guy too. He was awesome.
Fantastic dude. The house sat at the edge of the desert like it was hiding from something. Not danger, something quieter, something human. Beige carpet, white walls, the faint smell of dust and citrus cleaner. If you drove past it, you wouldn't think twice. You would never guess that inside, a small group of people were slowly, methodically, shedding their lives and their identities like an old skin. At 9 p.m. every night, the lights dimmed. At 9:05, the CRT monitors flicked on, humming like insects. At 9:10, silence settled over the room. Not the tense silence of fear, but the chosen silence of ritual. Ryan Ode sat at his desk, posture straight, fingers hovering above a keyboard like a pianist waiting for the conductor's nod. His name used to be Michael. He used to have a job, a family, a life with edges and colors. Now he was a designation, a role, a function inside a city that promised clarity, purpose, and escape from the heaviness of being human. Across the room, the others worked in perfect synchrony. One adjusted the HTML tables. One rewrote the homepage copy. One hummed a tune Doe had taught them. A simple melody meant to keep the mind focused and the heart quiet. They weren't building websites. They were building order. They were building the future. And in the process, they were building themselves. The group called this the evening task. Outsiders would call it coding, but to them, it was more like communion. At 10:03, the house chimed. A small, soft, almost polite sound. Not an alarm, not really a timer, a reminder, a breath. The moment to check whether the thoughts were drifting back toward the human world. Ryan Old closed his eyes. He pictured the next level, the way Doe described it, clean, ordered, weightless. A place without pain, without confusion, without the messy attachments that made human life feel like a burden. When he opened his eyes, the code looked different, sharper, more meaningful. He resumed typing. He didn't see it, or he didn't type it. He saw containers, boundaries, the same way Doe described them. Described the human body, a temporary vehicle, a shell, a thing to be used and eventually discarded. The website wasn't a product. It was a message, a transmission, a rehearsal for the real signal that was yet to come. Doe said the internet was a primitive version of the next level communication, a place where information traveled instantly, without bodies, without emotion, without the friction of human misunderstanding. Ryan believed it. He felt it every night, his fingers moving across keys like they were transmitting something sacred. But this isn't where the story began. Before the desert house, before the coding, before the mansion, there was Oregon. In 1975, a small town, a community center with folding chairs and bad acoustics. People came because they were curious, or restless, or spiritually hungry, Jerry, in a way that they couldn't quite articulate. Doe and Ty stood at the front, speaking calmly, almost gently about evolution, about shedding human limitations, and about what they considered the next level. They didn't shout, they didn't threaten, they didn't promise miracles. They simply described a path out of confusion, out of suffering, out of the endless cycle of wanting and losing and then wanting again. Some people listened skeptically. That would be you. Some people listened curiously. That would probably be me. Some listened with a spark of recognition that they simply couldn't explain. By the end of the night, 20 people walked out of that room and never returned home. 20. Walter Cronkite reported a score of persons have disappeared. But inside the group, it didn't feel like disappearance. It felt like arrival. It felt like stepping into a world that finally, for the first time, made sense. For years, the group lived nomadically, practicing extreme reunification. No sex, no families, no personal possessions, no identities. They were stripping away the very human in the human layer. They were preparing for something higher. Then, in 1985, T died. The group didn't know how to process it. She wasn't supposed to die. She was supposed to ascend physically. Doe sat with the news like a man holding a broken compass. For days, the house was silent. No task, no coding, no chimes, just a quiet grief of people who had built their entire reality around a woman who was suddenly gone. Then Doe emerged with a new interpretation. Ty hadn't died. Not at all. She had shed her vehicle and moved ahead to prepare the way. The theology shifted overnight. Bodies were temporary containers. Consciousness could simply transfer. Death was not failure. It became graduation. This was the moment that Heaven's Gate became what's called death compatible. The group grew more aesthetic, more controlled, more inward focused. They moved into the desert. They built the house. They built websites. They followed routines with military precision. They lived in sameness. Identical clothes, identical meals, identical schedules. And in that sameness, the group found comfort. They found their purpose. And they found a certain peace. At 11 p.m. every night, the monitors were powered down in perfect unison. The crew stood. They nodded. They moved toward their cots with identical steps. Ryan lay down, staring at the ceiling. He didn't miss his old life. He didn't miss his old name. He didn't miss the old world. He was happy and he was at peace, how he is right now. He felt ready, not for death, but for graduation. Just before sleep took him, a single thought drifted through his mind. When the signal comes, the real one, I'll be ready. He didn't know what that signal would be exactly. He didn't know when it would arrive. He didn't know what form it would take. But he knew this: tonight's quiet work, tonight's code, tonight's discipline, it was all a rehearsal, all preparation, all part of the long, slow shedding of the human vehicle. And in the stillness of that desert house, Ren felt something like peace. Years later, when the Holy Bop comet streaked across the sky, when the group gathered in the Rancho Santa Fe mansion, when the final ritual unfolded with calm precision, it wasn't chaos. It wasn't madness. It wasn't even a sudden break. It was the culmination of 1,000 quiet signals, thousands of small moments where the human world slipped further and further away, thousands of nights where the code felt sacred and the silence felt holy. The tragedy of Heaven's Gate wasn't just the final act. It was the years of quiet, structured, peaceful moments that made the final act feel like destiny. And that's where the part we rarely talk about. The part that explains why Heaven's Gate still fascinates, still unsettles, still echoes through the modern spiritual culture, that how in the 1990s this was allowed to happen. Not the comet, not the matching shoes, not the matching jumpsuits, and not even the headlines, but the quiet signal from a crazy, crazy situation. Heaven's Gate, folks.
Crazy stuff.
Man, and I didn't want to, if you're out there and you're listening and you're thinking, well, you didn't get into the details and you didn't, here's the thing. The details are the same as every cult that has committed mass suicide. The details are a group of people who believed and chose to go ahead and pass. Now, there's some confusion on little details about what happened to these folks, but let's get down to the nitty-gritty. When the time came for the Heaven's Gate folks and followers to ascend, they either had applesauce or pudding, chased it that was leaked with gosh, these words are so hard.
Some lethal barbiturate.
Some lethal dose of phenobarbiturate, and followed that with vodka. They went and laid down in their cots. They poured a plastic bag over their head and a shroud over that. They crossed their arms and they went to sleep. That was what happened to Heaven's Gate. Now, there's a few open that didn't choose to do that, but continue to this day. You can pull up their website and check them out. That still run the website because they're sharing the message of ascension. But for the people that chose to ascend, that was how they were found. All of them.
Question. In your research, did you figure out what about this comet event was enough to precipitate this mass suicide? What was it about this one that, okay, this is it. This is what we've been waiting for?
You know, honestly, there's not been in my research, I could not find an absolute. I have a hypothesis.
Which is?
I think Doe was getting older, and he thought that if we're going to do it, now's the time.
Yeah, maybe.
This might be my last chance for a cosmic event in my lifetime that we can make this happen.
I had another question, which I think you answered pretty well. What little that I looked into it, I had a question about where they started and their belief that the human body was a vehicle that was going to simply take us to the next spaceport, whatever.
Yeah.
And once T died, how did that change the theology of the group? I thought you explained that well. Isn't it amazing with these cults when they have such crazy beliefs and then things in life happen like T's death and they have to drastically alter, but they'll find a way. They'll find a way to work it in, and it really doesn't change their
It's spackling on a cracked wall.
Pretty much.
You know, they fill in a blank with whatever nonsense they can fill to keep that control. And, you know, here's a couple of things that Doe didn't try to be worshipped like a god. You know, they were ascending toward something else, and he was leading them to that. He wasn't the final. But if you Google Heaven's Gate and you watch some of his speeches, his talks, so charismatic. So
you almost have to be a cult leader.
I'm sure you could too.
That's almost the opposite of charismatic, though, right? Charismatic usually means someone who's friendly, outgoing, has charisma to the point you want to follow them. And now you're saying you can look into his eyes and see the craziness that almost makes you want to back off.
You can, maybe, but some people would perceive that crazy as passion. Some people would see that crazy as love. Some people would see that crazy as I'm with you, depending on where they're at in their life.
Yeah.
20 people from one little town. Yeah, I'm good with that. Let's go. Let's do that.
Crazy stuff it is.
Let's hear something from our crazy buddy Ed Locke.
Okay.
Jerry, when you told me the name of the thing you're covering tonight,
right,
I'd never heard of it.
Same. Until I began to do research.
I was like, holy buckets, why have we never heard of this?
I agree.
And I mentioned that this episode was something we were going to do. And I have a good friend, I consider a good friend, who actually was in what some people would consider a modern day cult, some people consider a religion. And I've invited him to come on for an Encounters episode. I don't know if he will. It is a very personal thing when you're associated with some of this stuff. But if he chooses to, I'll be excited to announce when that happens. But I don't want to take up any more of your time. Jerry, tell us all about the 12 tribes.
Absolutely. Before I do you remember 2, 3, 4 years ago, you and I don't even remember why, we were in Shelbyville and we stopped at a little diner. What was the name of that place?
The diner?
On Main Street.
Yeah, the bakery, you mean?
Okay.
McKinley's Bakery.
Bakery. Little sandwich shop.
McKinley's Bakery.
And we love that place. Yeah. There's a different bakeries now that have the name bakery, but they're basically sandwich shops. The one here in town, very much the same way. When you go into these places that are like that one, McKinley's Bakery, that, have really good food. A lot of them have a lot of things in common. Warm, rustic cafe. Oftentimes old wooden beams, not some newer aesthetical look. Homemade bread, soft lighting, nice, friendly staff smiling at you like people you've known for years. It can feel very peaceful, almost idyllic. Place where I would say, like, maybe where time feels like it's slowed down, almost stopped.
I would say Amanda's Cafe carry-out is like that,
okay,
too.
There you go.
Shout out to Amanda's if you're ever in Lawrenceburg. Go check it out.
There you go. There's another place that fits all that. It's called the Yellow Deli. You ever been to one?
Nope.
They have a few of them in Tennessee, and they're in different states around the United States or different countries around the world.
What was the name again?
Yellow Deli. They are ran by this group. Now, in this case, behind that warmth, behind the fresh bread, behind the friendly faces, there's a world that most customers are never going to see. And that world is what we're going to talk about tonight. A world of extremely strict discipline, authoritarian leadership, forced labor, even child abuse.
What?
Forced social isolation for many members. A world that's built on communal living, strict obedience, apocalyptic prophecy, and a belief that they and only they are the true chosen people that are preparing for the end of times. I'm talking about the 12 tribes, a group that hides in plain sight. They blend hospitality with high control theology. And if you've ever eaten at one of their yellow delis, you've already stepped into their world, whether you realized it or not. Now, the yellow deli, or the 12 tribes, they began in the early 1970s, right in the middle of the Jesus movement. If you aren't familiar with the Jesus movement, it was a major Christian youth revival that began on the west coast of the United States in the late 60s and early 70s. It merged elements of the hippie counterculture with conservative evangelical Christianity and gave participants the nickname Jesus Freaks. We probably all heard someone call that. Now, the founder was Elbert Gene Spriggs. He wasn't a pastor by training. He was actually a former high school teacher who felt that, He felt that modern Christianity had become hollow, too superficial, if you would. And you know what? A lot of those things I would agree with. Yeah, he thought Christianity had become too institutional, too divided, too disconnected from the early church that's described in the Bible, particularly in the book of Acts. He believed that the first century church was the only true model. Believers living together, sharing everything, preaching for the return of Christ, no denominations, no hierarchy, no possessions, just total unity. And in 1972, he started the church, if you will, in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Yeah, we're not talking about, normally when we think about cults, we're thinking that's something that happens somewhere else. That's something that happens in California with those crazy liberal hippies, blah, blah, blah. This started in Chattanooga, Tennessee. He started small, informal Bible studies. They would all eat together, have a meal, sit around, have open door gatherings. But Spriggs, surprise, surprise, was very charismatic. He had certainty. He had a vision. And people were drawn to that. Aren't they always, to the leader of these cults? I guess, how could you start a cult if you weren't charismatic? And people were drawn to that. Soon he had families that were moving in together, sharing their money, giving up all their personal property, and forming what they called the community. Now, this wasn't just a church. It was a lifestyle, a total system. And if I'm being honest, and that was where it ended, I would have to agree with a lot of what I've described so far. In the last week or so, 10 days, when we've talked about this episode, I've told you I was torn. I was conflicted with this group. A lot of what they believe, I believe. They believe in a strict reading of the Bible. They believe that we have tried to modernize too much, we've changed too much, and gotten away from the original teachings. A lot of that, I believe. Now, if they stopped there, as I just said, that would be one thing. Sadly, they didn't. Let's talk about what they believe for a minute. The 12 tribes theology is very intense. They believe that the world is corrupted beyond repair, and only their community represents the true Israel, the people that God will use to usher in his kingdom. They believe everyone outside of their group is spiritually lost, and that every other church is completely and totally spiritually dead. Salvation, in their view, isn't about faith alone. It's about obedience, discipline, submission to the community and the elders. They also believe in a very strict form of communal living.
That's weird.
No personal property, none. No private bank accounts, no independent decision making. When you join, to prove that you want to be a part of this group, you have to sell everything and give it to them. Everything, all money, all checking accounts, all investments, all everything. You have the clothes on your back and you walk in and give them everything else. Everything belongs to the group. Excuse me.
Isn't that called communism?
This goes beyond communism. Communism allows you to have some personal possessions and property, right? Communism believes that all people are equal and should be paid the same amount of money. We'll get to how much you're paid later. This just basically says you have nothing. You have no personal possessions at all. It doesn't stop with personal possessions and your money. Your time and your labor belong to the group. All members are required to work in the group's businesses. The yellow delis, the farms, the bakeries, the construction crews. Now, the Yellow Tribe claims that everyone's volunteers, which is how they get away legally with not paying anyone anything.
Huh.
So you join and everything you've got, you give to them. You have to give them all of your work, which in many cases is 70, 80, 90-hour work weeks, and you get paid nothing for it. You also aren't allowed to refuse the work. Don't forget. Once again, they aren't paid for any of their labor. If you choose to leave, what do you have? You have no home, no job, no possessions. Literally, you would have to leave with the clothes on your back. We was talking earlier about why do people stay? Well, in this group, the economic conditions that they subject you to are a big reason why you stay. If you go to leave, you have nothing.
You know, I don't mean to bring it up, but a lot of bad things happen from desperation. When you take everything away from somebody, it makes it very tough to separate, to leave.
There's a lot of people who attempt to keep someone in abusive relationships by doing exactly that.
That's where I was going with that. And it is a horrible, horrible existence to feel trapped.
It is.
Trapped by your spouse, trapped in a home, trapped in a job, because you've worked there too long and you make too much money, and it's hard to break away and get that same pay.
Totally agree.
Our whole world is full of traps. These are controllable, though.
Absolutely should be. So we've talked about the economic, financial considerations. And then there's their approach to children. The 12 tribes teaches that children must have their, quote, unquote, and this is in their doctrine, their literature, must have their will broken early so they can grow into obedient members of the community. Former members describe corporal punishment as not only frequent, but severe. Not occasional discipline, which I, again, am a strong believer in.
Absolutely.
I think the Bible teaches it, even if you're not biblical, if you're an atheist, how can you have children and not believe that you have to discipline them and teach them the right way to go?
There's a difference between discipline and abuse.
Absolutely.
There is, and I think the lack of discipline is a whole different form of abuse.
I would agree. Absolutely. Yeah, but again, they go way beyond that. Not occasional discipline, but a system of correction that is woven into daily lives. Now, unlike many organizations where abuses stem from individuals, rogue people acting on their own, the 12 tribes' corporal punishment practices are explicitly codified in their official doctrine. They have what's called the rod of correction, grounded in a literal interpretation of Proverbs, specifically passages that talks about sparing the rod. They have group doctrine that mandates the use of physical discipline to correct any form of disobedience, hesitation, or disrespect. Former members and internal group manuals specify that corporate punishments begins in infancy. You heard that correct. Often as young as 6 months old. As soon as the child, in their opinion, is capable of willful resistance, committing such horrible acts as crying or squirming during a diaper change or refusing to sit still, they teach that the child must be disciplined. The child must be given the rod of correction. Discipline is administered using a thin, flexible wooden dowel. That is their rod. Again, a thin, flexible wooden dowel is used to beat children as young as 6 months old because they have the audacity to cry or squirm during a diaper change. Internal training documents explicitly detail how to strike the child on the bare bottom or legs to inflict pain without leaving permanent damage or breaking the skin.
Or getting caught.
Or getting caught as part of it, obviously. As well. Speaking of which, not surprisingly, this has led to the interventions by courts as well as law enforcement. Two of the more well-known cases, the Island Pond Raid in Vermont, 1984. June 22, 1984, over 90 Vermont state troopers and social workers raided the compound in Island Pond following allegations of severe physical abuse and neglected medical care. State officials removed 112 children from the community to perform medical examinations and assessments. What happened? Within 48 hours, District Court Judge Gene Swam ruled the search warrant was unconstitutional, not because they lacked evidence, not because it wasn't justified, but because he said the state lacked individual evidence against all 112 children. So they didn't have documented proof of the abuses against all 112. He admitted they had it against some. He forced them to release all 112 children. They were all returned to their parents, and the state was prevented from carrying out medical examinations. While the raid failed legally, it did bring national media attention to the group's internal practices. Several years later, in Germany, in 2013, an undercover reporter secretly filmed video footage showing 12 tribes community in Germany, and he documented children being repeatedly beaten with the same wooden rods in a basement of a home. German child welfare authorities and police raided 2 compounds. They removed 40 children and placed them into state foster care. Now, apparently, the European courts have more common sense than American courts. European courts upheld the removal of the children. They cited that the group's institutionalized corporal punishment violated fundamental child protection laws. The group ended up shutting down its German communities and moved to the Czech Republic, where homeschooling and corporal punishment laws were less strict. If you're wondering about what daily life inside the community is like, sure.
Let me just stop.
Absolutely.
So we care about beating our children so much, we're going to move to a different country?
Or they will allow us to beat them the way that we think they should be beat.
That makes me throw up in my mouth a little bit.
Absolutely.
It's not the wine I've had tonight. That's just gross.
Isn't it sick? Absolutely sick.
You and I both sitting here have disciplined our children as we saw fit, when we saw fit, in a way that we saw fit. But that would never cross the line into beating.
Yep, absolutely. Never came close.
No, never.
That reminds me of something. My father, I was talking to my father once when my daughter was very young, and I remember asking him if he had any parenting tips for me. I don't know about you, but when I first became a parent, I was not ready. I was not equipped. I had not done research about proper parenting techniques or any of that. And to be honest, I don't know that I should have. Here's what I mean by that. My father was a Baptist minister, and he said this. He said that he felt the same way when he and my mom first had my older brother, the first child. And he said he went to a Christian bookstore and he bought a book on parenting. And he said he read the whole book. He read it 2 or 3 times. And I was probably, my daughter was young, so I was in my late 20s. My brother around 30 years old, so he was going back 30 years in time. Yes.
So he was reading a tablet that had been chiseled, is what you're saying?
Sure. It's 40 years before you were born, so yeah.
I mean, I don't know what you're talking about with that. That's blah. That's just blah. I'm sorry. If y'all don't know, Jerry's very old.
Yeah. 10 years older than Steve. So Steve is old as dirt, which is the way he describes me, minus 10. Dad said all those years later, he said there's only one thing in that book that he remembered. Only one thing that stuck with him through all the years. And that was never discipline your child when you're angry.
Right.
He said that it stuck with him and made such an impression on him that he thought, I'm going to try to do that. It said, you know what? The child's going to be there. The whatever atrocity they committed will still be there. Wait till you calm down. You can address it then. And he said that was the one thing that 30 years later he remembered. Yep. And I remember thinking that's great advice, and I tried to take it. Like my father, I asked my father, do you think you did that? Did you accomplish it? He laughed and said, not even close. There was times I did. He said, but I don't think I ever went across the line into abuse. He said, but first of all, I was cognizant of the fact that this could be a problem.
Right.
He said, I think that alone helps dramatically. And I 100% agree.
And that's not just your children. That's everything.
Sure.
Your boss, spouse, employee.
Everyone, friends. Absolutely.
Yeah, if you get upset over something, if somebody's wronged you or slighted you in some way.
There's a time and a place. But not when you're pissed off.
Take a day.
Absolutely.
Go have a drink.
Calm down.
Sleep on it.
It'll be there tomorrow.
And then handle it like an adult.
Absolutely.
So many people today fly off the handle. Yep. Road rage is one of the things.
Prime example.
Oh my gosh, I can't tell you how many videos I've watched of people hopping out of their cars and busting mirrors off and getting...
Or in today's world, popping out with a gun, start shooting.
Yeah, it's crazy. Take a minute. It'll be fine.
Absolutely.
There is nothing worth... There's one thing in this world worth going to jail over. One. Don't touch my grandbabies.
Yeah.
Me, you're going to fight. And jail is a lot less for me as old as I am now.
There you go.
I'm just saying. Anywho, sorry, Jerry.
Daily.
Hey, while we have a little break, do you care if I give a couple of shout-outs?
No, go ahead.
I just wanted to shout out a couple of places that we met over the weekend. We went to the Hocking Hills Bigfoot Festival. One of the groups that we met there is one of my personal favorite booths. We see them at multiple festivals. It's the P House Games. If you like board games with a kooky or a weird bent, P House Games is the place to go. I've gotten several games from them. They sell dice. They sell all kinds of stuff. Check those folks out. It's just a man and a woman who are trying their best to enlighten the world with some games. They are awesome people to talk to. They're awesome people to have conversations with, and their games are solid. Love them. Check them out. Just go to their website, P House Games. Also met a couple of guys who had just started a brand new coffee company out of Ohio called Moonville Coffee Company. It is brewed, packaged, and shipped from Southern Ohio. Great coffee. Check it out. Go to their website, Moonhouse Coffee Company. Check them out. We don't get paid for these advertisements. I believe in these companies. I like them. I want you to check them out and enjoy them. So check those guys out. Sorry, Jerry. Didn't mean to.
I would like to call out one more group
Sure.
that we saw. Last year or year before last year, we interviewed them. The RIM group.
Yeah.
We saw them, talked to them again this year. Last year, we interviewed them. The RIM group is a group that is dedicated to helping those with disabilities. And what they're trying to do is to help keep them at home. Instead of putting them in a group home somewhere, they have found out that it is far, far cheaper. And they believe, and I would tend to agree, it is usually far better to keep them in the home that they grew up in with their family and loved ones, and they try to help support and make that possible. An absolutely fantastic group of people.
It's REM.
REM group. I don't know how wide of an area they cover. I don't think they're down in Kentucky. They are in Central Ohio. Love the group. The people that we've met are fantastic. I love everything about the group.
Yeah, we were, Jerry's memory and my memory, you can tell the difference in 10 years. I was like, I think that's
The
Ben.
same person.
And he's like, no,
No,
that
you
ain't
didn't say
Ben.
Ben. You
I
said the
said
same
Mike.
person. You didn't remember the name.
Okay, fair.
I said, we saw them setting up the tent. We
yeah.
saw the name. I was like, we interviewed those guys. And you said,
Yeah.
I think that's the same person we
Yeah,
interviewed. And I said,
it was.
well, I don't think so.
It was.
Steve unfortunately was right.
That was one of like 17 times this weekend.
3
Jerry
times.
said, hey, you're right.
3 times this past weekend.
At
I
least
sadly
17.
had to say, Steve, you're right. Now, the truly sad part is we've known each other for how long? How many years?
30 some?
Yeah, over 35 years. 3 times this past weekend, I had to say, and I did, when I knew I was wrong, I said, Steve, you're absolutely correct. But that was only a total of 5 times in 35 years that's ever happened. So, yes, very rare
What?
that happens.
What are you talking about? It's a daily occurrence.
Never.
It's so rare that when he was talking to his daughter, I got his daughter on the phone, and she thought she was heading to the basement.
Exactly. It's so rare for Steve. That's my whole point. It's so rare for Steve to be right and me wrong. Thank you for backing me up. Anyway, we're back to...
I will always give you props, my guy. Always.
Absolutely.
If you need somebody to bring receipts, Jerry is the man to bring receipts. There you go. How about it?
Absolutely.
He's blushing, I think.
I can't.
I will
argue with
say,
that.
before we came online, you did say I was pretty. I just want everybody
I never
to know.
said anything. Actually, we have that recorded. Would you like me to play back what I said?
No.
What I actually said was you're ugly.
No.
But slightly
that's
less.
not what-
It's exactly what I said. I said you're ugly, but slightly less ugly than
Let's go back to the 12 tribes,
Let's
shall
go.
we?
Let's go back to daily life inside the community.
Please.
For those
that's
that
creepy
live,
as junk.
it is. For those that live inside the 12 tribes, their daily life is structured from morning to night. Communal meals, assigned labor, worship gathering, scripture study, childcare, farm work, business operations, everything, literally everything is done together. Everything is overseen by the elders. Gender roles are very strict. Men lead, women cook, clean, care for children. Marriage is either arranged or at least approved by leadership. Otherwise, it can't happen. Personal autonomy is minimal if it exists. Members work in the group's businesses. Again, they have no choice in this matter. They work in the group's businesses, the farms, the construction crews, and as we've mentioned, the Yellow Deli cafes. These cafes are intentionally very warm and inviting. They're designed to draw people in. Now, they're not used to recruit them immediately. It's not like if you go in and have a sandwich, they're going to, try to get you to join. But what they are used for is to create curiosity, to make you wonder why everyone seems so peaceful, so content, so unified. And that's their hook. The 12 tribes don't recruit aggressively. They recruit through hospitality. Summary of their controversies, if you will. Child labor. Children have been found working in the group's businesses, baking, farming, assembling products, sometimes in violation of labor laws. Again, this is forced labor. This is often 10 to 12, 13-hour days labor, of which they are never paid. Child discipline, we talked about that. Former members described the harsh corporal punishment with the wooden dowel rods. Medical care. Some communities discourage, often prohibit modern medicine, relying instead on prayer, natural remedies. Members are discouraged from outside friendships, a form of isolation. They're not allowed to have any media, any independent thinking. Oh, I don't know if I mentioned earlier, no radio, no television, no newspapers, no outside interference. They're afraid you might find out what is going on in the world. Law enforcement has investigated them multiple times in the United States, Canada, Germany, Australia. But again, the group is very decentralized and often cooperative on the surface, at least, to these investigations, and cases are hard to pursue. Now, the 12 tribes, in case you haven't gathered, it isn't just an American phenomenon. They have communities in Canada, Australia, Germany, Argentina, the United Kingdom, Brazil, Spain. Their yellow deli cafes are often the public face, the warm, rustic, inviting, and intentionally designed to feel like a refuge from the modern world. Yes.
I was just going to say, I looked them up. They have cafes all over the United States.
They do.
All around the edges. Washington, looks like Oregon, California, Chicago, all up in the Northeast, all down in Florida, in Argentina, like you just said, Brazil, England, it looks like, and Spain.
It's worldwide.
Wow.
A lot of countries they're in. They're not in Kentucky.
No.
But again, we have, I think, 3 in the state of Tennessee. So they're certainly very close by.
Sorry, and you go to their website, and the food looks good. It looks very inviting, like you were saying.
I'm sure the food is good. Yeah. I'm sure I would enjoy the meal, though I will never eat there because I do not wish to support a group like this.
No, I agree.
But I'll bet the food would be very good.
Yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt, but that was...
Thanks.
Wow.
Let's talk for a minute about why people join. And we talked about your group, and we talked about cults in general, and I don't know that this one's any different. I think they joined this group because they're offering community, purpose, certainty, a structure in life, a sense of belonging. I think that's probably true for most cults. People who join probably don't feel like they belong, that they're looking for that. This group provides a clear worldview. If you're going through a crisis, a divorce, addiction, drugs, alcohol, maybe you're lonely, maybe you're searching spiritually, the 12 tribes can often feel like a lifeline. Once you're in, the structure makes it very hard to leave. Again, we talked about it. Your job, your home, all your possessions, everything belongs to this group. Your friends, your relationships, it's all tied up with this group. So it's very hard to walk away from it. When you lose, if you leave, you're losing everything. It's not like leaving a job for another job. In this case, you leave this job, you're losing everything. Now, let's look at the big picture for a minute. The 12 tribes is not the most violent cult. They're not the most apocalyptic. They're not even the most bizarre. But it is certainly one of the most quietly influential. These guys are hiding in plain sight. They blend hospitality with high control theology. A group that looks peaceful from the outside, but becomes much more complicated the deeper you go. It's a reminder, I think, that not all cults look like cults. Some cults look like cafes. If you ever walk into a yellow deli, you probably meet some kind people. You'll likely get good food. You probably feel welcome. But behind that warmth is a world built on obedience, prophecy, and a belief that they, and only they, are the true chosen people preparing for the end of days. It's a story of faith, control, community, and the human search for meaning. And it's definitely newsworthy.
And it's still active.
Oh, very active.
Gosh.
Very active. I don't know, but I'm guessing from what I read, it's probably, never saw a list of members. It's probably as active now as it's ever been.
That's insane, man. Insane. I have a couple questions.
By all means.
That's what we do here. I want to know how the 12 tribes reconcile its mission to be, quote, the light of the world, with the very doctrine that is strict separation from that same world.
Well, you know how most religions would view being a light as active outreach? You need to go out. You need to spread the light. You need to be a light into the world. Whether it's mission trips, volunteering, integrating into dailies. This group doesn't believe that. This group believes that they, as a group, as a whole, are a light to the world.
Weird.
They still believe that each individual person must remain extremely separate. So at least that's what they're teaching their people.
It's just the first day we've done this podcast. That's been our end line. If you can't see the light, be the light.
There you go.
That's kind of creepy now. Especially in this connotation with these people.
The opposite belief with these guys.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, not exactly. If you were asking them, they would say, be the light, but not individually. As a group, we'll be the light.
Right.
Not individual lights. We're not going to send each of you out here, but as a group, we're going to shine the light. Is I'm sure what they would say.
Yeah, it makes sense. What do you think, in your experience or your research, how did the community justify the punishment as spiritually negative or necessary? And do you think they had any debates internally about that? I mean, I know it's all speculation.
I'm sure that, first of all, how do they justify it? Biblically. They go to the scriptures, as we mentioned earlier. There's some in Proverbs where it talks about if you spare the rod, you spoil the child. And it's going to use that as their justification. Now, most people with common sense in most denominations, I don't know what your church teaches, every church I've ever been in teaches this as symbolic, that the rod is discipline. It doesn't mean a physical rod, as these guys say.
Right.
And it's simply saying discipline your children. Don't allow them to
Make them mind, guide them.
Absolutely.
You know, if most religions believe that when you experience hardship, and it is their way, God's way of honing you, using the rod.
Yes.
On you.
Right. Common sense tells you that you have to teach your children a certain level of obedience. If not, you're in a city and your young child starts to run into the street and you holler stop and they refuse to do so because they don't have to listen, they can get killed.
In today's world, they turn around and flip you off as they run into the bus.
But obviously, common sense alone should tell you that there has to be a certain level of obedience. And children are children. They're not being bad. They will test the rules. They'll test the boundaries. So again, the Bible teaches to not spare the rod. It is not saying physically abuse your children. It's not saying take a wooden dowel and strike your children. It's simply saying use discipline, whatever that may be. So that's the way I would end. That's how they would justify it. Now, the second part of your question was, do I think there have been any internal debates? I couldn't read anything about it, but here's what I do know. It's one of the biggest reasons people leave the group. So I'll guarantee you before they left, a lot of them sat down and said, wait a minute, isn't there some other way than me beating my children every day? So I'm sure there have been a lot of debates about it.
Crazy, man. Crazy. Yeah. Whew. Heavy topics tonight. Heavy. Like when I went into this, I did not expect it to be a heavy, thought-provoking episode. But man.
Biggest takeaways from the two groups together, what would you say? Maybe not just takeaways, but takeaways from the sense of what can we share with our listeners to help guide them to make sure they don't get into a group, or if they've got children, whatever.
I'll tell you the biggest takeaway. Sure. How about you just be kind to everyone you meet? Because you don't know what somebody's going through. You don't know how close they are teetering to the edge and just needing a positive interaction with somebody.
Absolutely.
Whether it's holding the door open or how are you today?
It can be something as simple as a smile.
Absolutely. Because I guarantee you, these cults do not grow from people who are fulfilled.
That's right.
They don't grow from people who are sustained. They just don't.
Agree.
So how about my takeaway is, and I know, I am a cup running over positive kind of person. Always have been, probably always will be. Have my days like everybody else, but I really do try to be a positive person. So I know. I also know that it is very, very hard for some people to do that.
Yep.
But guess what? If you know it's very hard for you to do it, then it's correctable. That it is okay to force a smile to the little person in the drive-through that you're going through that just gave you a nice hot coffee.
Yeah.
You know, you never know what people are going through.
Very
That's
true.
my take. That's my biggest takeaway from this. These cults can't exist if people are fulfilled and are engaged elsewhere.
I agree. We talked a lot about people looking for belonging. They would have way more sense of belonging if we're all nicer to each other and they didn't have to go searching for something like this to find it.
Hey, dude, as I get older, years ago, I was a big Borders guy.
Borders?
Yeah.
I got you.
Our country's borders, your country's borders, your state's borders. Those are all imaginary. How about we just be one race, one human race, and just treat each other with a little bit of respect? Just a modicum of respect. I'm not saying you got to be best friends with everybody. Scientific fact says that you are probably good friends with 4 or 5 people, and you may have a circle of 100, 150. Our brains typically don't remember names past that. Some of us, like me, have a gift or a curse, whatever you want to call it, for recognizing faces of people way more than that. But that doesn't mean that every stranger you meet isn't worthy of a smile.
Sure.
Or a, hey, how are you?
I agree.
Everybody out there is eye rolling right now. They don't know me, but if they saw me in the street, they'd be like, oh, he really is meaning that shit. I love my sister. She's probably watching this on TikTok. She is the exact opposite of me. My brother, the exact opposite of me.
Isn't
My
that
other
amazing?
brother, exact opposite of me. They people are the plague. Go away. And I'm like, oh, give me all the people. It's like I'm the oldest, so I probably sucked up all the people germs.
Gotcha.
Anywho, that's my takeaway. What's yours?
Yeah. I was thinking about it in a much more broad, general sense. I loved your answer, by the way. I liked your answer a lot better than mine. But I was just thinking we need to find a way for people to feel more a sense of belonging without having to go searching for that in cults or from strangers. They're going to strangers and trying to find what they should find from friends and family. That's that.
Can I ask you a pointed question?
Sure.
Do you think it's a failure of the church? And I don't mean
Could
individual. I don't
Could
mean
agree.
Catholic or Baptist. I mean the church.
Well, I think to a degree. But first of all, what percentage of people go to church in the first place?
I think that the percentage that go to church and are of the church are totally different numbers.
Either one.
Yeah.
But my point is, they're not reaching near everybody in the first place.
Yeah.
So is the church partially responsible? 100%.
Yeah.
But furthermore, we as a human race, going back to what you were saying, we don't smile enough. We don't, hi, how are you today? We don't spend 5 seconds to ask someone how their day went. And when you hear and can tell sometimes in their response, spend 5 minutes saying, hey, sorry, tell me about it. I care enough to listen. Go ahead.
I have in the past worked with a section of the community that all they do is love. and I'm not getting into details. I don't want to get into details, but you talking about seeing, getting back what you put out.
Yep.
That is the community.
Sure.
You give a smile and hey, how are you doing today? And a high five or a fist bump, and it's given back to you tenfold.
Yep.
We should all aspire to that.
Absolutely.
I'm just saying. It's tough. I know it. It sucks. You don't care what other people's day. You got a house payment. Your car payment's late. You're worrying about whether this bill is on, if your water's going to be on when you get home. The things we're talking about are free.
And I've long said, if you want to feel better about your current situation, folks, we've all got problems. We've all got bills. We've all got house payments. We've always got the health of ourselves or a loved one, something to worry about. We've all got our problems. If you want to feel better about your situation, find out about some people that have got it way, way worse than you. And suddenly that puts in perspective, your problems suddenly become really small.
One of the things, and I'm going to bring this up, Jerry, and this may not be the place. I don't know. I don't care. It's our show, right?
Sure.
One of our biggest subscriber jumps the last couple of months has been China. Weirdly enough, China.
Yep.
I saw a report the other day, a vlogger, and folks, these guys are awesome. These independent journalists, they do more journaling than any of the big stations you see on TV anymore. This young man had went to China, to Hong Kong. Hong Kong is a spot where in the world, it's one of the only few places that rival the cost of living of New York City.
I think it's far more expensive, is it not?
It is. And many of these people have, all they have is the ability to pay for a coffin-sized apartment with a communal bathroom, a communal shower, and literally a little, like, in America, we would consider that like a college refrigerator door. That's how they get into their little apartment. They can't stand up. They can lay down. It's basically the size of a coffin. And they're paying $300, $400, $500 a month for this, getting eaten up with bed bugs and roaches and everything that they need. If they want to cook, they have to go to the bathroom to cook.
Sad, huh?
All I can think about is no matter what your situation is, there is somebody else who is, you are living their dream.
Yep.
Period.
But we often are so tied up in our lives that we don't take 2 seconds to even realize how fortunate we are.
Dude, there are so many reasons we should all give thanks for who we are, how we were born, because it doesn't matter how poor you are, what your situation is, there is somebody that you right now are living their dream.
Yep.
And that's real. I just want to say real quick before we get into the bonus story, thumbs up, thumbs down, Jerry. These particular...
Thumbs up on both. Absolutely.
I think the more exposure that cults get, the harder it is for them to be cults.
I agree.
So I'm with you. Thumbs up, 2 thumbs up. And I'll throw a thumbs up from the octopus for Brent because we know he would agree
there you
with
go.
us. One of the places that we got to experience, almost by accident, when we were in Hocking Hills, was the haunted Moonbow Tunnel. Moonville Tunnel.
Yep.
Not Moonbow. Moonbow's in at Lake Cumberland Falls.
Yep.
If you follow the old rail deep into the woods of Benton County, Ohio, the trees start to close in around you. The air gets still. And then, almost without warning, the forest opens into a clearing where a long brick tunnel cuts straight through the hillside. Black, cold, and echoing like it's breathing. Not only that, it has an absolute ton of graffiti. That's the Moonville Tunnel. The town it once served is gone now. No houses, no lights, no people. Just foundations swallowed by moss and a cemetery that leans more and more every year. But the tunnel remains, and locals say it is never truly empty. The first ghost that people talk about is the brakeman. In the 1880s, a young railroad worker was walking the tracks at night, lantern in hand. He was struck and killed by the train. Ever since, hikers say they've seen a pale figure standing in the middle of the tunnel, swinging a lantern in a slow, deliberate arcs. Sometimes the light is steady, sometimes it flickers. It's like a struggling to stay lit. And sometimes it appears behind you, even though you know you're alone. Another spirit is the engineer, killed when his locomotive derailed near the tunnel entrance. Witnesses describe hearing metallic grind of a train that never actually arrives, followed by a blast of cold air rushing through the tunnel as something massive just passed by. But the strangest story belongs to the woman on the tracks. She died trying to cross the rails in the early 1900s. The people say she still wanders the area, calling out for help. Her voice is faint, almost a whisper. Hikers swear it echoes off the tunnel walls, even when the wind is still dead. Visitors report footsteps behind them, shadows that move against the direction of their flashlights, and the feeling of someone brushing past their shoulder in the dark. Some say the tunnel amplifies sound in unnatural ways, and others say it swallows that sound completely. And every so often, someone walking through the Moonville tunnel stops halfway, turns around, and sees a lantern glowing at the far end, swinging gently, patiently, even though there's no one else there. Moonville is gone, but the tunnel remembers. Jerry, you had an almost experience in that tunnel. We went to the tunnel.
We had a couple of experiences. Number one, it mentioned a couple of instances of the lantern, part of the old.
Oh my gosh, that was so weird.
What did we find? What did we find in the middle of the tunnel?
Over a freaking lantern.
A lantern, an old lantern, not. This thing goes back to the mid 1800s?
Yeah, it was redone in 1903. It was built in 1859.
It's got a big plaque built into it. It was remodeled in 1903. Now, this lantern that we found was not from that time period, but in the floor of this tunnel, halfway through, we found that. The other thing that happened was we went through it and started back, and we began to hear music.
And every time we stopped, the music stopped.
Yes. And we, again, this long tunnel, if you talk, you've got the echo reverberations coming off the walls. So that partly amplified the music. But as Steve said, every time we stopped, it seemed to stop. Now, eventually we come out and realize there was a couple of cars parked at the far end, and that was where the music was coming from. But no, that was a little unnerving for a minute.
And I think what it was is one of those cars may have been at the festival and got one of the flutes or recorders or whatever, because that was what the sound was.
Yes. It wasn't, it wasn't ready. It wasn't rock and roll.
No. It was creepy. And Jerry's like, oh. He said, and I quote, did I just have an encounter? I'm a bit disappointed and excited.
Well, I was disappointed at the end when I figured out that it wasn't an encounter.
Yeah.
That it was just some person playing their little homemade flute or whatever. But yeah, it was kind of between the finding the lantern on the floor, which we'd already read about how that,
that was
went along with the myth.
Beautiful place. If you ever know
Zalatsky,
Ohio, go check that out. Yep. For real.